And my name is Shauna Clifford with Vermont Agency of Transportation District 7. I'm a project manager out of St. Johnsbury, and I have 8 other counterparts around the state. So basically, our focus with VTrans and the towns and spring flooding or flooding in general is to help the towns become prepared. We help with response and recovery, and funding is also a big portion of what we can do. So in preparation, we work with all the towns in our districts very closely. We do annual meetings with the towns, and during those annual meetings, we do a lot of assessments of their infrastructure. We listen to the towns, we find out where their problems are, they'll bring them to our attention, and that's just general interaction that can happen in the spring or all through the year. Another focus point that we have is road erosion inventories, which is part of the municipal roads general permit, where they have to look at different segments of their roads that are hydrologically connected. But this is a great tool to also help assess what they have out there for problems and things that they need to be aware of. So during our evaluations, we look at the ditches, the culverts, the road surface, and part of our what we do for the towns is help them prioritize their issues. We also promote preventative maintenance, and we do that through the town road and bridge standards, which has been in effect since 2001. It's gotten more and more comprehensive and is taking into account the municipal roads general permit. The other thing that we strive to make sure that the towns understand in their preparation is to know who their district contacts are. That's why we meet with them annually, and to know who their regional planning commission person is as well. The regional planning coordinators or commissions, I'm sure they're going to speak about this later, but they're in the thick of things as well during a flood event, and we work hand in hand together to try and assist the towns through that process. Next slide, please. So response and recovery. Basically, there's an event. And what we do is, as I mentioned, we worked with VEM and the regional planning commissions. Once we know that there's some damages out there, whether it's through the RPCs or through towns calling us, we help perform damage assessments. We find out where they are, and are these damages on a federal aid highway, which is a whole different funding mechanism. What are the severity of the damages? Is it going to trigger a FEMA event, or is it just federal highway, or are we going to have to take care of it with state funding and money? Does the town need assistance in obtaining necessary resources such as materials, equipment, or contractors? We've had several events since I've been with the districts where they've been isolated occurrences and really devastated a town. So we've been involved in helping open up gravel pits and find gravels. If they don't have enough trucks, we've given state trucks to towns. And we've also helped them coordinate contractors as well. All things that can be very important in a larger event, such as the May 11 storm up in the north of Vermont, or the Irene event, which was primarily southern. With all this, we also will provide technical assistance, helping the towns figure out what their plan of action should be. If they should replace a culvert, how big it should be, so on and so forth. We will assist with documentation. Documentation is huge, whether it's through a FEMA event or a federal highway event. Oftentimes, photos and notes are unfortunately not as thorough as they should be. So we're there to help the towns with that. Okay. And then are there any additional funding sources for the impacted community? So I'll actually focus on some other funding. So some of the other funding sources, say it doesn't trigger a FEMA event, or it triggers a FEMA event but also triggers federal highway ER program. For the federal highway ER, that is done specifically through the districts. The eligibility is, well, first of all, it has to be a natural disaster, and the damaged highway has to be functionally classified as a rural major collector or higher, or as an urban collector or higher within the urban federal area or federal aid urban area. So in order for it to be a federal highway ER event, it has to have a minimum threshold of 700,000. And that includes our own state roads as well as the eligible town roads that meet the qualifications of the major collector or higher. Each site has to have a cost threshold of $5,000. And there's two types of work. Emergency work, which is actually 100% reimbursement, and that work has to be done in the first days. And then after that, it's considered permanent work, which is an 80-20 split. And with permanent work, there's a lot more hoops to go through, such as right-of-way categorical exclusions. The first days when it's classified as emergency, it's get her done. And that emergency work can then be the permanent repair. Next slide, please. The other funding source that we have is the Town Highway Emergency Fund. So basically, there's either a FEMA event and a site or a town does not get FEMA funding for one reason or another, or there is no FEMA disaster, there is no federal highway disaster, then we will look at the Town Highway Emergency Fund. It's 100% state dollars. And to qualify, it's kind of a unique situation or a unique formula. The damages have to be greater than 10% of the town's non-winter maintenance budget. So this is another reason why we do meet with the towns in the spring, is to go over their annual financial plans, get good numbers. So if there was an event that the town had no other help, we would be able to, at our fingertips, see if they were going to meet the deductible or not. And then reimbursement of this funding source is either 90% of the repair replacement cost or the 10% of the non-winter maintenance budget, whichever one is greater, whichever one gives them the greater reimbursement.